Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hypertrophy Odyssey. It is the fourth day of the week, aka the special beam cannon workout today. But anyway, to the main subject matter for today. The ends justify the means versus the means justify the end. So the main reason why I want to discuss this is because this is a mentality that I think that a lot of people end up dealing with, or I guess have it backwards in a certain sense, especially when it comes to having a job, because I like my job. I don't necessarily love it, but I don't necessarily hate it, and I like that. I like that for my job. And we'll get into why in a bit, but I think this is a dichotomy that a lot of people end up getting into where they will most likely go to the means justify the end, which is the hard part where their entire life they are going through it in order to get to the end, which is in theory a job, right? That will help them get to the end. But that's kind of a different story. We'll talk about that possibly a little bit later. But this is something that has been on my mind for a little while now, because it is something that I feel like when people do that, they have it all wrong. And you could really see it when they have like an epiphany or like a weird like midlife crisis or a quarter life crisis, as I've talked about, I think, before on the channel. They have this weird consciousness of like awakening where they have realized, oh, maybe everything I've done to just get to this point is probably wrong. And it has a lot to do with societal pressures, plus the idea of what are you doing with life, the stupid idea of if you love your job, you won't work a day in your life, which is the stupidest thing ever. We will talk about that today. But I think that most people go that way. And I think that that's the biggest issue. The issue is that it's probably misinterpreted to the point where it makes people question their own lives a lot, to the point where they've never done it before. And then all of a sudden they're 30, not knowing what they're doing and kind of stuck in a rut because they're just handcuffed to something that they now have grown to resent because it represents an old them. So in today's episode, we're going to be looking at this because this is a very interesting subject matter to me, because I am a very much the ends justify the means type of person. I like the idea of that. There are certain things I know are only there to be a cog for something else. So we're going to be talking about that and a lot of other stuff in this realm, because there's a lot to talk about when we get to Mother Race.
All right, so start this day off with squats, which are pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. The ends justify the means versus the means justify the ends. So the main reason why I want to discuss this is because I had my old coworker who was working with me, who I believe was in the latter half of this scenario where the means justify the end. And I think that that is something that is not necessarily the way to live throughout life, because I think that a lot of people end up getting caught in that cycle where everything that they do into their world is for their end goal of whatever their job is or whatever they do on a daily basis. And I think that ends up becoming the downfall of a lot of people, where they seek a higher level of self through their work. And this is quite essentially a lie, basically told by anybody and anything that could gain from it. Because realistically, how easily could you get a worker if you just sell them on the idea that what they're doing is actually worth their time and effort, not just the money? You know, it's going to make their souls a little better. Now, of course, there are people who do good in the world, but those people are such few and far between. And when you look at certain people who do good in the world, they're also kind of sometimes terrible people. You don't need to go that far to see this. So for example, one of the highest rates of infidelity is the medical field. I mean, you just look at nurses. They're known for a reason to be whores for a reason. So it's a very specific type of thing where, yes, you might be helping people, but that doesn't necessarily absolve you from all of your sins as well by being this. But this is the other thing, is that a lot of people end up sinking so much energy into whatever the end is, that if it isn't what they want to be or what their dream is, quote unquote, then a lot of people feel trapped and stuck and just continuing the cycle of never ending wanting of figuring out what they want to do with their life, and then just doing whatever they were going to school for, because they have the sunken cost fallacy of all the stuff that they have to do. I mean, imagine being a doctor and wanting to quit and do something else with your life, but only not being able to because you're like $300K deep in debt. You know what I mean? Like, it's just for school. So it's not even like you declare bankruptcy. You're fucked. And you've dedicated 10 plus years of your life. Your life has been chosen. It's done. Like, yeah, sure, you might be able to pivot later in life, maybe once you're 50, but these things are going to keep following you. And that's the thing. It's like a shadow, a burden, a something to keep you down no matter what, that will follow you until you're either able to pay it off or you die. One of the two is going to be the downfall of a lot of people. And I think that that hits a lot differently, especially because a lot of these people, like kids who go to college right after school, right after after high school end up changing their minds. You see this all the time with the quarter life crisis, as I've possibly made an episode. I'm not 100% sure if I remember, but they have this issue with that, where all of a sudden what they sunk all this time, effort, and money into isn't actually what they want to do, because a lot of the time people don't realize that, yes, you're going to do this thing for the next 30 plus years. Are you okay with that? And a lot of people don't ever actually ask themselves that while going through the process. They just kind of look at a number, let's say the money number, without realizing that sometimes whatever the money number is probably not worth it, or worth their soul even, just to try to do something like that. And that's where I feel like I personally go in the other way, where the ends justify the means, where my job is just a job. And that's great. I like that. I like that it is truly neutral, because I don't love it, but I don't hate it. And I think that that's the best thing that a job can be, is something where in the middle, where you can enjoy it, but you don't have anything to keep you there except for the actual job itself. Like, you're not there because of X, Y, or Z benefit, or X, Y, or Z thing, or people. Those types of things are superfluous at best. They might make things a little bit nicer on the day to day, but then again, it doesn't matter. I can leave whenever, and that's the good part. And I'm also in a field that technically I didn't even know I was ever going to get into, but also at the same time, it's nice because now I have options for myself in the future. So keeping it neutral is a good way of making it so that you can take the job and use the benefits of it, and maybe channel that into something else, something that you actually would like to do for your time, effort, and money, because a lot of people don't actually ask themselves this, or don't even try to go out of the realm. It's like a rat race to go to see how fast they can get into something that will numb the brain into some other type of world after they're done working. The amounts of vices that people end up getting into after work in order to get away from their entire work, because that's their life, and then their other parts of life. So then it becomes like a weird balancing act of them just trying to disassociate themselves with the working them versus the unworking them. You see this in all facets of life, not even just like, let's say, doctors, because I've been using them as examples, but white collar people, blue collar people, all of these people have these different vices in order to get away from the world that they're currently living in, because they're just there, and I think that that's one of the ways is to get out of it, is to try to find whatever it is to make it so that you want to deal with the job, and make it so that way you get off on the other side doing what you want to do as well. Sure, there are people who have hobbies, but turning the hobby into money is such a hard thing. Not the hardest thing in the world, but a hard thing nonetheless, that sometimes doing that is actually also detrimental, because sometimes it makes the hobby seem like a drag, and a lot of people will give up the hobby because they don't care anymore. That happened to me with something like live streaming and video games. That ended up becoming just a drag. I don't want to play them anymore. But that is also something else with adulthood and a different thing. But at this point, I know that I would like something very neutral as a job, because it's just a job. And at the end of the day, that's the best thing that it can be. It's just there so I can get money and do with what I want with the money. It's an exchange of time and effort, and that's it. Nothing deeper than that, but also nothing worse than that.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. The ends justify the means versus the means justify the end. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because I think that this is a very interesting dynamic to have within life, because a lot of people don't realize they are in one camp or the other. A lot of the time, they don't realize they're in the means justify the end, which is what I would consider more of a dead-end way of thinking of things. And it's not good for a lot of different people, because I think that spiritually, we have not really been there. I think a lot of things and institutions push this narrative out to people because it gives them an end purpose goal that is stimulate the economy and don't do anything that you would actually want to do for your spirit. And I think that that's the entire purpose of that. Why things like college and all of those things ruminate and kind of mush these people into something where now join the workforce and stay there for 40 years and do absolutely nothing else. Waste your time with bread and circuses every weekend, gamble away all the money, extra money you have, or just eat as much food out as you can, consume the next product and move on. Don't think about what's happening next. Just keep doing this until you're 80 years old and then you roll over dead, really. And that's the issue with it. I think that that's what is kind of told to people, when in reality, that's going to just lead to a lot of, well, not only burnout, but as well as people who just become lost in life, where they have to do something because they are really stuck. And then there's no real getting out of it. Not realizing that the other way around, the ends justify the means, is where you understand that something like a job or a thing is a temporary and or a sacrificial lamb in order for you to be able to do and pursue other things that are self-worldly, you know, something that is above you, that whatever you want to do, and chase those things whilst using those other things as the fuel in order to get and have the ability to do it. Of course, this might be like sounding like you might overwork yourself, but then again, that's the entire point, right? Would you rather overwork yourself for a dead-end job or a dead-end place, a place that you know is you're not going to do anything with, or burn yourself out working for yourself, trying to make sure that you go up in the world and trying to do whatever you actually want to do? I think that a lot of people end up getting that idea of, if you love your job, you won't work a day in your life. That's just a lie that is being told in order to make it so that you are okay with being oppressed by a boss somewhere, somehow, and making sure that you don't question the system, and the system is allowed to just, as long as you love it, boom, it's like you're never working, which is the most idiotic idea possible. Even when working out here, I know what I'm doing to my body. It's still something where I understand there will be pain, there will be ups, there will be downs. To say that I'm gonna love it no matter what, even though I know I'm going to love it, it's still going to be work. There is that level of work that has to be put regardless. I love lifting, but I'm not gonna sit there and say it's easy and that it feels like nothing and that I would want to have it be easy. That's the other thing, is that struggle and is half of life, really. And a lot of people don't want to struggle with a lot of stuff, so they will struggle to get to an end where they can just toil and do the same things over and over again, and then they wonder what's up with life. Where is this going? What's happening? Where do I go from here? Is this it? You know, there's a whole host of questions that come up, especially when they're in this basic cycle, that the world and society that puts them there is not going to answer for them, and they are not even told where to go and or shunned away from doing something like that. Oh, you like doing this? Oh, that's a weird hobby. Man, you like to make YouTube videos? That's kind of fucking weird. You know, like they will try to keep you down because other people are also stuck in that loop at the end of the trail where they're just kind of there now and they are fucked, but they don't want to see others succeed. So then if you actually try to transform it into something where you want to make something of yourself, a lot of people will hold others down because they're like not worth trying to actually actualize others around them, because then that makes them have to reflect upon themselves. And it's a very vicious cycle, especially when you are surrounded by people who are just in that regular tier type of person, that are just the bread and circus type of person, that aren't really necessarily all the way there. I would consider them soulless, but that's a whole other conversation that we'll get to in a different day. But personally, if we were to actually have great systems where there are certain people that can do this, where they go to the means justify the end, that's understandable and that actually can work. But this is such a rare case scenario, I feel like, for a lot of people, that I don't think that everybody that gets put into that cog is ultimately being destroyed by the machine that put them there. So I think that there should be an alternative, or at least just thinking about it, because there's not much there. And I think that a bunch of different factors, such as societal pressure and things like that, are just going to keep going to make it so people just end up breaking the machine, or more likely than not, breaking themselves in the machine. And then thus they're just kind of lost and meandering and going back in as a broken piece until either something happens to them, they're lost their job, or they're just fucked. And then there's just a kind of a wandering soul out in the world doing whatever they can to survive. And it's a sad thing, but unfortunately, life only gives you two options. Your life is either a comedy or a tragedy. There's no in between. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, you can't choose it. So we'll talk more about that on a different episode. But with that being said, tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Keep it heavy, stay safe out there, and stay cool. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.